what do you see as being an effective hook for the post?
Yeah, stories work well. Like this is a story where I learned, not I learned, but like here's the story of how X thing happened. Like so now you feel like there's intrigue. So okay, I want to see at least the next paragraph to see of like what is it, right? And that's basically how it should be working. Like the first paragraph should send you to the next one and the next one and the next one. But yeah, stories work really well. What else? When you share lessons as well. But lessons, it depends. So if you don't have this credibility yet, it works way better when you say something like, I did a ton of research on, I don't know, like Steve Jobs. And these are his five key lessons for doing X.
We're all part of this whole money game. This all.
Welcome back to another episode of Beers and Business. I'm Abe Dearmer, CEO of Appsembler.
I'm Andrew, CEO of Team Go CRM. We've got a guest today, Abe.
We do. Today we're joined by Eduardo from Rhetoric to talk about his life, background, get a bit of understanding about, Rhetoric, the company that he runs. And we're going to really focus today about how to build a brand on social media, particularly looking at LinkedIn. It's something that I think a lot of people strive for, but really struggle to execute on. So really excited to hear a lot about this. I know that it's something that I've thought about pretty significantly, but haven't quite pulled the trigger on. So definitely might get a bit of inspiration out of this as well. So welcome, Eduardo.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's the segments that we got today. So we'll go through our normal weekly wrap. We've got some cool quotes in there and some cool learnings, and then we'll look at a bit of a background about Eduardo founding Rhetoric, a bit of a story there, and then we'll look at the final segment really focused on that LinkedIn content. But we'll try and get as much as we can into that third segment, so we'll probably run through it pretty quickly. But let's kick it off with our beer. What do we got today, Andrew?
Yeah, well, one of us has to drink a beer each week, as you know. So this week I have more of a classic. I've got the Traveller, Australian Lager. So don't know if you've heard of this one, gents, but it's launched by Travis Fimmel, the Australian actor that played, of course, Ragnar in Vikings and a few other things he's been in. What was the...
what is it, just a lager, mate?
The long tan? Yeah, it's a low... carb.
Watching the figure.
Lager. I've dropped a heap of weight, so it's probably not good. I probably need to get back on carbs. 99 calories. There you go.
There you go. How does it look, mate?
The beer I poured doesn't look very good.
Well, today I'm going to mix it up a little bit. I know I'm usually the bastion of the gin, but today I've got Pinky's Sunset Gin. So this is from Rottnest Island. So my wife went across to WA, not that recently, it was actually a fair while ago, and picked me up some sample packs. But Rottnest Island gins, it's fermented with the Rottnest Island Daisy. So their whole thing is that they use local WA components to distill it, which is really cool. And it's got a nice pink colour to it in its sort of test tube vibe with, I guess, that's a lighthouse that might be in.
That's straight gin. I assume that's straight gin. How many shots is in that?
It's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's 3
sample.
I think it's 3 standard drinks, 3.1 standard drinks. There you
nice.
Go. So that's almost just like one of our beers. It's some of the weeks, Eduardo, we get these beers that are just like super strong, sitting at about 3 standard drinks.
It looks great for like traveling, I guess.
Yeah. Just in case you want to take. Oh, look, just to make sure, it's only about half, right? So 1.5 standard drinks, just so Andrew doesn't judge me too much.
No judgment here.
I brought a hard seltzer, a White Claw.
Seltzer. Oh, you got a White Claw.
White Claw.
Oh, nice. That's a classic American drink there, the White Claw. I remember when they came to Australia, they sold out a bottle of those so quickly. Yeah. There was a big launch on White Claw. It was actually really, really hard to get them. It was 3 years ago? I think they came to Australia. What flavour White Claw you got today?
I'm doing mango, tropical vibe.
Yeah.
Nice.
They're about 3 standard drinks, aren't they, in one of those?
Yeah, I really don't know.
Actually, you don't really do standard drinks in the US, so
it's a big one. So I don't know, a standard. how much does a standard drink has. I don't know. For me, it's. I mean, I love beers. Actually, here in San Diego, there's a ton of breweries. I'm currently doing hazy IPAs all the time. But like right now, it's 1 p.m. for me, so no, I'm more like wine and beer after 5, 6
You
p.m.
gotta have rules,
So
right? You gotta have rules.
Yeah. What's the time for you, Abe?
It's 7 a.m. 7 a.m. for me.
It's 6 a.m. here. So yeah,
So,
we don't do beers before 5
We've got
as well.
standard. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, I think, is the rule that we put in place.
exactly.
Whereabouts in the US are you, Eduardo?
In San Diego, in California.
Oh, nice. I love San Diego. Probably the best food I've had in the US, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, I'm originally from Mexico, so for me, the food in San Diego is terrible compared to Mexico. To be honest.
Yeah,
fair.
I was gonna say the Mexican food is pretty good.
100%.
That's beautiful, yeah. And what, you've been in San Diego? Actually, we'll get into that. But let's crack on with our learning of the week. I want to make sure that we leave enough time to get into the content generation side and really dig into that. But Andrew, what's your learning of the week?
Yeah, mine's just around SEO and content. So obviously you and I are pretty big on it, Abe, and SEO for me is probably my biggest funnel where I get the most juice from my customer base. So the big thing for me is backlinks and blog refreshes recently. So especially one in particular blog, I had a heap of impressions, but not many clicks. And when I actually looked into it, I was, page 3 on Google, and it was around best CRMs for small business. Now, obviously, that is our ICP, right? Is people looking for that? So I did a big backlink push, and in a couple of days, we're now page 1, and our impressions have skyrocketed from about 600 a day to 6,000 a day, and
That's awesome.
Clicks have 5x'd as well. So make sure you're on top of your blog refreshes, and if you can start generating a network to do backlinking and using that, I'd start looking into that ASAP.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and a lot of times people don't understand is that SEO is like a constant journey, is that you have to consistently go through and update things as you move through. It's not just like a set and forget. And Eduardo, you're probably like thinking, yeah, same with like if you want to do branding on social media and LinkedIn and things like that, like it's not just something that you can rest on your laurels with. You constantly got to look at what's my top performing blog, what do I want to rank for, and then checking it like every week, because Google can release an algorithm update and then suddenly you go from page 1 to page 4 and you have no idea why, and it's going to affect your funnel, especially if it's one of those top performing blogs. Definitely something to look into. But mine's just about reputation and brand. It's very important, and it's this whole thing of it links into my quote that I've got coming up as well. But as you scale as well, it's super important because people remember. So it's like the interactions you have while someone's a customer, the interactions you have when someone's offboarding, the interactions you have with prospects is like, if you're that leaves a lasting impression, and it gets incredibly important as you scale as well. And I think it's really important that to make sure that when you're doing business, you're doing it ethically and with the customer's best interest in mind. So if you sell someone a contract, do a bait and switch on them, that word's going to get out there. And I think there's a lot of companies that get caught out with a bad experience. You look at places like Reddit, and it's just like a cesspool of people saying, stay away from these bad actors because they're horrible. And people find out that sort of stuff. And as you scale, it just increasingly gets worse. So I think making sure you do what you say and do business with the customer's best interest in mind is really a big part.
Definitely.
I've lost my screen.
For me, my learning is that when you build a personal brand, it is a lifelong project. So, for example, in my case, most of my audience is early stage founders, and most of my inbound leads are from early stage companies like pre-seed, seed stage companies. But we initially started doing offering our services to those companies, but then we switched to more like growth stage, Series A, Series B, Series C. So what I realized was that that type of marketing for lead generation, it it stopped being effective because it wasn't giving me the right ICP, right? The right ideal customer profile, because most of my audience currently is on the early stage. So my learning is that doing outreach, not cold outreach, but warm outreach organically, is highly effective. So I've been doing this for a week, and it just works. Like, just by hopping on LinkedIn and being helpful for people, just like pinging, like liking a post, then next day commenting something useful, of course, and then sending a message like, "Hey, your I don't know, like your banner doesn't say anything. It's not explaining anything about your company. You should do X, Y, or Z." Right. So, and that's it. Like, no pitching, none, anything. Just like being helpful. It opens a ton of conversations that, if you have a positive sales funnel and a good conversion, and if your pitch works, then that gets you clients. So you, like, it's in my point of view, is it's a waste of time doing like hard cold outreach, because it's so negative, like the reputation that it has. And doing these warm outreach as well, it removes that, like, that bad reputation, because you are just approaching as a helpful person with a specific agenda, and that's help, not trying to sell anything.
Yeah, and that's, I can't remember whether I talked about it last week or not, but it's something that I've found is that for Andrew and I, because, selling an LMS and, virtual labs, it's not something that everyone wants to do every day. It has to be a set initiative. And the same with like getting a CRM or getting a new CRM. It's not something that, people do every day. But being in the conversation is the most important piece. And by engaging with people, being helpful with people with things like on LinkedIn, you allow yourself to get in the conversation. And I think that's like, people might not be ready to buy your services now, Eduardo, but because you've like, I remember that guy that helped me with the banner because mine was crap. He really seemed to know what he's talking about. I might ask him, how do I build a brand? And then next thing you know, you've got a customer. Like, it might take 6 months for them to get there, but the whole thing is to be in the conversation is the most important piece.
Exactly. I was speaking exactly about that with my team today. Like, you just need to plant seeds, and when they are ready to buy, they're gonna reach out to you.
Yeah. And the problem that people have is people are impatient, right?
Yeah.
They want to see it, like, get them in the funnel now. Like, but sometimes it just takes a little while. You just got to nurture and nurture and nurture. And, if you start now, 6 months later, you start bearing fruit. Like, it's, you don't plant a crop and then harvest it the next day. You've got to be patient over a period of time.
100%.
Yeah, awesome. All right, let's get into the quotes. So mine's from Carl Jung. Andrew, your wife would be impressed. Charlotte is a psychiatrist, so probably follows some Jungian philosophy that comes with it. So you are what you do, not what you say you do. And so I think this is really important when we look at, building the brand, and our topic for today is that, you can post on LinkedIn, say all these really nice things, but you've got to actually follow up with some action, and you've got to actually know what you're talking about. And I think the example you gave there, where you comment something useful, and then you give them some useful feedback that's going to actually have a positive outcome, that shows that you are what you're doing as opposed to what you say you'll do. So I think that's a really important piece, is being helpful, giving something for free without expecting anything in return often can go a really long way in that B2B sales place.
Totally.
Nice. And you said my wife will be proud. Your buddy Luke will be proud of mine. So it's not what you sell that matters as much as how you sell it. And it's by Brian Halligan, who is the CEO and founder of HubSpot, which is Luke's favorite tool in the world and a competitor of mine. I won't even say competitor, right? Because as the quote says, it's how you sell. So I think we sell to different markets, although they try to sell to everyone. But this comes back to even what Eduardo was saying. It's providing value and sticking by that. So whether it's your marketing, whether it's your outreach, whether it's actually when you get in the demo, it's how you're selling and solving problems for customers rather than just pitching, this is my product. It's the benefits of the product and making that a fit for your customers. And if it's not a fit, send them on to a customer or send them to a competitor that is a fit. I think that goes further than trying to force something down someone's throat. So yeah, that's my quote of the week.
Yeah, nice. Love that.
Yeah, and my quote, I guess my client would be proud because it's a quote from one of our clients.
Nice plug here. That's good.
Yeah, his name is Arjun Paul, and he said, "In the world of B2B, being helpful is the best marketing strategy." And it's basically the same. Like funny that the three of us like connected on the same topic, right?
It
But
always happens.
yeah, it's just like you just need to be helpful, and if you're helpful, people open doors to you and they trust you. You don't repel them. On the opposite, you attract them. And yeah, I mean, if you are doing that to the right people, then naturally they're going to be interested in your offer. So you just need to be out there and help and wait for them to ask, like, what is your offer and how does it work? And then you just explain them without pitching, without selling. Right.
Yeah, and I think it's funny that you say that we all landed on the same thing, because it really does make you laugh that the whole prospect of when we think about B2B branding on something like LinkedIn, I think we all gravitate to being helpful and providing value to someone as being like the linchpin to being good at that particular area. And I don't know whether it's just a bias that we've developed or what the case may be. But when I think of people who are good LinkedIn, who I follow on LinkedIn and who I look out for posts on LinkedIn, it's they're sharing resources, they're sharing best practices, they're sharing tips, they're sharing their learnings. Like, you think of it more of like a knowledge share as opposed to a
Value.
Yeah, and so I think that's like where we gravitate towards that whole process of like, hey, it's all focused on what value can you bring. We'll get you that following and continuously do that over time, and that's where you'll get that following. But to switch gears a little bit and understand a little bit more about yourself, Eduardo. I mean, I'd love to know a little bit more about your professional background and what led you to, founding Rhetoric and getting it off the ground, because, it seems like there's a pretty diverse background there, and, coming in from Mexico to San Diego, love to know what that was like for anyone else who's looking to, make the journey to the United States really from anywhere.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my background has been being in so many different industries. So I've been in the startup scene, in the startup ecosystem for the last more than like 15 years, 16 years. In the past, I built 4 startups. 2 of them got acquired. If you want to see like a brief timeline, when I finished college, I founded the first online food delivery platform in Mexico. Because I loved ordering food all the time, and like doing it by the phone, it was just a pain in the ass. So I saw at that time, like, do you remember Dragon's Den? The BBC show that actually Shark Tank.
Yeah.
The show comes
Yeah.
from Dragon's Den from the UK. So Dragon's Den
Okay.
is like the original one, and they pitched that idea for the UK. And I was like, wow, I need to do this in Mexico. So it was basically that. And so I started that with a friends and family round of funding, and grew that business to over 200 restaurants. And
Nice.
it was me
Wow.
like 20 years old. And some like a big company doing that in Spain was trying to get into Mexico, and they couldn't because like the cultural barriers and all that stuff. They didn't know how to close restaurants, like how to sell to them and all that stuff. So they ended up acquiring us. So it was like a 21-year-old at a time, with his startup
That's
being
amazing.
acquired. And at that time, I mean, that was like kind of like 15 or more than 15 years ago. I don't know. So at that time in Mexico, it wasn't usual to hear news stories about like international players acquiring local tech startups. It was pretty new
Because the
in
tech
the
scene's pretty
entire.
big in Mexico now, isn't it?
Yeah, right now it's really big, but at that time there was like maybe tops two or three VC funds operating in the region, in the entire country, or maybe like five in Latin America. It was like really really small. So that put me on TechCrunch, and that made a lot of noise. And I guess that from there, that's how I landed my next job, because I got a call from a recruiting agency that they wanted someone to help them open a music streaming service from France. It's called Deezer, which is like Spotify, Apple Music, and Deezer. And they wanted to open in Mexico and Central America and all that stuff. So it was perfect for me, because I just sold my company, and I was like, wow, I mean, this is huge startup valued at over $1 billion at that time. So I became a 22 years old managing director of Mexico, Central America, and the
That's
Caribbean.
amazing.
It was crazy. So I was flying often to Paris, to the HQ, and meeting like all of the managing directors of all of the countries. Learned a
How
ton
was it
about
being so
remote
young,
work.
dealing with such? Because I imagine you'd be dealing with people, twice your age, three times your age in
Yeah,
some cases. Like,
yeah.
did you have a lot of hurdles to overcome being like a 21-year-old trying to talk to these people?
You know, what I realized was that people have these like, they just think like it's not normal if I was 21. So they, like, their default was like I was like 30, basically.
That's assumed you're older.
They all assume that. Only when I, like, when the conversation like about my age popped up, like I was telling them, and they were like, "What?" Like a huge surprise. Like they default. I and it's not like I look old. It's just like, you know. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't a thing, or like a people didn't make a big difference, because they just didn't know. But yeah, so I worked at Deezer for 4 years, grew that business to more than 2 million subscribers in Mexico. And they were planning to do an IPO. And then I started to think the bug of starting another business, because it started to be like boring for me after a couple of years. So then I found that, like, so I first started in online food delivery. Then I went to music streaming. Then I started a boutique fitness studio. So into the fitness. So yeah, I started a boutique fitness brand when I saw that industry was starting to pop off. Like
Was that like their F45 style Orange Theory?
exactly.
Is that around that time frame?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was starting like to pop up that in the US. Then Soul Cycle, Barry's Bootcamp, like the more like high end luxury, and I basically did that in Mexico and ended up opening 6 locations in the country, built a team of around 250 people in the course of 4 years, and then COVID hit.
No.
So
Yeah, the gym
yeah,
industry was like slashed
yeah,
through.
yeah. It was painful. So from one day to the other, we had to shut down all, like, close doors for all of the studios. I had a team of more than 200 people. So then we started, like, just for survival, to try to keep getting some revenue. We created a streaming service to keep, like moving the clients from the studios to pay us, like, via like
In home.
a subscription. And that worked for a while. But then I started having issues with my investors, because they said that it was all my fault, that the studios were closed because of me, and in the end I'm responsible of everything. And so at that time I was pretty burned out, so decided to sell my stake. of that business, and then I applied to Y Combinator with the idea of starting a digital fitness platform, and I got in.
Nice.
So I started doing that, and it was crazy because we were growing like crazy, 40,000 users in less than 1 year, and then COVID ended.
So they all went back to the gym.
So you got hit. You got hit with both sides of it.
Exactly. Yeah, crazy. So yeah, after that, I was like, okay, I'm now. At that time, I was already married with a small, like a son, a 2-year-old son at the time. So it was like, okay, I need to de-risk, reduce my risk, because being in the startup scene is always like super high risk, working at least 15 hours per day, like all the time. Like basically, since I was doing my first startup, I knew that a personal brand was important. At that time, it was PR, basically. But as social media and Instagram and all the social networks start to pop off, I always had that bug of like being active on my socials, but I never had the time to do it, or the energy, or the creativity on how to, like, what to say or anything like that. So I was always delaying it, you know. And that's how the idea of rhetoric started. So decided to start an agency because it's a cash generating business, less risk. At that time, I moved from Mexico to the US. So when you do that, everything's way more expensive,
Yeah.
like crazy expensive. So it
Man,
was for
even
me.
like coming from Australia to the US, you feel how expensive it is. You know, coming over there. Yeah, it's crazy. Like I feel like, yeah, the US is definitely a higher price point. I think probably than most places in the world.
And then California, which is
Yeah, dude, the California style. Yeah, San Diego. Yeah.
yeah, in terms of taxes and like the prices of everything is crazy expensive. But yeah, I mean, for me, I don't know why, like I don't feel afraid of anything. I just like jump in. That's some like one trait that I have. So I just did that, and that's why I started rhetoric, basically, because I knew that agencies, have less risk. They give you the financial resource way faster than in a startup that you usually, if everything goes right, you get acquired or you IPO in maybe 10 years. So that was basically the why, like, because I wanted to do, I had the problem myself. And at the same time, I thought that it was the right fit for me to get out of the VC backed world and
So
start more a
you sort of
traditional
sat there
business.
and looked at your own performance on branding and social media, and you're like, why am I hesitating so much to post things on LinkedIn, and what's stopping me? And I think that's like I mentioned at the start, like it's something I've looked at but haven't got into, because probably for that same reason, right? It's like, well, what do I talk about? How do
Yeah,
I want to come across? And I think that's like a super important part of a lot of people's, like, the amount of people you talk to on LinkedIn and they're like, oh, I just use this to find my next job. Like, I don't use it for, anything else. Or, I use it to find tips. I use it to, like, the amount of people who built careers off LinkedIn. I think we talked to Celeste, who's a gap seller, and she said that
She
she
lives
gets
there.
majority of her inquiries because of her LinkedIn content. And it's like, that's her lead gen.
yeah, it works amazingly well, to be honest.
And then to focus a bit on rhetoric. So, looking at a little bit and trying to understand a little bit more, but I'd love to hear from you. So it seems like it offers tailored LinkedIn posts to allow people to build their brand, like profile optimization, understands who you are, your tone of voice, what you want to talk about, how you want to come across on LinkedIn. And then you create a scheduled, obviously, depending on how much you want to pay, right? Because the work that goes into creating those posts, daily, weekly, whatever the case may be. So is that about right? What you do?
Yeah, so I mean, when I was I mean, I'm still in YC. My company is the same one. It's just a pivot. So I have like all this community of YC founders, and I was speaking to them to validate the idea, and everyone had the same problem. They were like, I want to do it, but I don't have the time. I'm super busy. All that stuff, right? So we created this agency in a way to make their life easier. So our target customer, our ideal customer, is a B2B startup founder after the Series B, Series C. And they usually, I mean, we know them really, really well. They have usually more than 50 employees. They are crazy busy. They are flying all the time. They usually have an assistant or a chief of staff or someone that helps them out on anything, on everything. So we created the entire offer in a way to make it that simple for them. They just need to hop on one call every 2 weeks, and it's like a session with a therapist. Basically, they just need to talk, answer questions. We get prepared uh, for that call with a lot of research and specific questions. And on our team, we have expert interviewers that really know what to ask and how to lead the conversations in a way to like extract those golden nuggets from the clients that they don't even know that they have them, right? But they just start speaking from based on the questions that we ask them. And that's basically it. So they just need to hop on a call, and then we send them the entire batch for the next 2 weeks of content. And they just need to approve it. Like it takes like half an hour to review everything. Um, and when it's approved, we take care of the scheduling. We take care of basically everything. We also do commenting, engagement, all that stuff because that's super important as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's something that really want to do, but they don't have the time. So we basically are like a plug and play content team
So you like
specifically for LinkedIn.
so you like how you'd have a SEO consultant or a contract with an SEO company who might write blogs and make sure your site health is good and go through and look for backlink opportunities and things like that. Like you're essentially doing the same thing for LinkedIn. So posting regularly, keeping your profile at the top of people's feed, optimizing it so when people go in there, they're like, oh, great, this is what we're looking for. And then the likes and comments, I guess you could consider like that backlink sort of service is
Exactly.
similar to the likes and comments, right?
Yeah, totally. Exactly. Yeah. The engagement part is super important to draw even more people into the profile and to make the growth uh, faster. Now, the tricky thing is that it's ghost writing, right? I mean, because it's not like we're managing the company pages, it's the founder profile. So we really need to understand how they speak, their style, their tone of voice. We put them in specific archetypes to really understand like what type of archetype they are, and you can see some trends on how they speak. So based on that, we can nail their voice. um, and yeah, I mean, we call it co-writing because in the end it's the work that is done by both of us. So it creates these interesting relationships with these high performers because um, it in the end, like, it's kind of like a team where we're both creating content because they are thinking, they're the ones providing the ideas or the content, but we're just doing the heavy lifting of making it, expanding it and putting it on LinkedIn in a way that sounds interesting for people. So because there was this misconception of, oh, ghostwriting is like just impersonating other people and that's fake and that's not, like but it's not like that. It's just like um, when you go to the gym, I mean, you can work out by yourself, or you can hire a trainer and the trainer can help you out and tell you like everything, all the pointers, and we're just basically helping them with all of that.
And that's the funny thing is that people have this, I guess, feeling towards ghostwriting, which I think is a bit strange because ghostwriting is used everywhere, right? Like everywhere is some form of ghostwriting. Do you think the president of the United States writes their own speeches? They don't sit
Of course
down and
not.
sit there and like pen their own speeches. They've got a ghostwriter that does that. You don't see like the the president get up and say, "I'd just like to thank Abe for writing my speech today. Here it is." It's not. It's people use it all the time because if you're a founder, you're busy. You don't have time to sit there and ruminate about certain topics and things like that you want to look into. You've got to, you find someone to do it, and it's no different to those sorts of people. Like people who get their books written will often have a ghostwriter write it first, and they'll go through and write everything, and they'll just proofread it, make some changes, things like that. Like it's it's a pretty common practice. And then one thing I was going to ask is about how AI, because you got disrupted by. Oh, sorry, mate. Sorry. Yeah, because you get disrupted by COVID. At the start when COVID comes in, shuts the gyms down. You then, you pivot to the online. COVID ends, and then that, shuts everything down for the app. And then now AI comes out, and you must be thinking like, oh no, are people going to go to the ghostwriting? But I think you sort of hit the nail on the head there, where you said that it's important that you have that tone of voice. You put people in certain archetypes, and you write, on behalf of them. I don't think AI can do that, just yet. I think it's so bland, and like you can tell, like, it's obviously that is the tone of voice of AI that you hear people say. I mean, how has AI affected? Have you had to pivot at all with AI?
No, so actually, I mean, 2 weeks ago, I went to a mastermind event of ghostwriting agencies, and I was speaking with multiple founder of other agencies doing the exact same thing, and we all came together with the same conclusion that AI is just driving benefits for our industry because it helps us like internally in our internal processes to be way more efficient, like categorizing content and doing things that we usually have like an intern do. We can now use AI, and for people that think that AI will replace writers and all that stuff, it's it's great for us because now it's like there's this entity called AI that is going to reduce the quality, like the overall quality of the writing. So now it's going to be more relevant to hire ghostwriters for the ones that want high quality work. So we become more
Yeah.
relevant now. It's not like it's going to replace us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's the whole value piece. I think is really comes to the front when you look at people who rely on AI to produce their content and things like that. You can see that the tone of voice isn't there, but also the opinions aren't there. And I think humans are really good at, like, they want to see an opinion left, whether you look at politics, right? Politics, right? If it's left or right, people want to know, what side they want, an opinion on which side you stand on. They want an opinion on, certain policies. They want an opinion about, I don't like that dress, or that color doesn't look good. I don't like that car, or I like that car. Like, people want opinions towards this sales process works, this doesn't. They don't want, here's 3 possible sales processes that you could follow, because that's essentially what AI is going to spit at you. It's not going to give you a definitive answer and say gap selling is the best method for sales, like, full stop. It's not going to provide you with that. It's going to provide you with a wishy-washy, non-committal answer.
100%. And like good ghostwriters, premium ghostwriters, they get paid because of, for being consultants, not necessarily for writing. Like writing, you can hire anyone to write. There's of course different types of quality in the writing, but that's not the most important thing. The important thing is to know what to write, like what ideas to really dig deeper. And it's basically uh, like a growth consultant focused in organic content for a specific social channel. Not so much on hiring a writer to just write for me. We do a lot of trend analysis. We track with multiple tools all the content. We do very deep deep dives around the ideal customer profile of each client, so we really get in the conversation to make our clients very interesting for their ideal ICP. Because if you just speak about the same thing all day long, it's at some point they're going to realize that you have an agenda and you're just speaking about the same thing, and you become like a boring person. And when this becomes really effective is when you really nail what are their interests. And they, trust me, they have way more interests than your company, right? So based on that, we create a content strategy with different content pillars, making sure that those content pillars are interesting things that the ideal customer for profile of our client has. And when you just say on every post interesting things about many different topics, they, as time goes by, they are like, wow, this person is really interesting. I want to follow them. I want to keep consuming their
Yeah.
content. And that's how you build trust and connection. And that's how magic happens.
Yeah,
And
no,
to
you're
do
absolutely
that,
right.
yeah, to connect everything in the end, you need to do a lot of strategy and a lot of consulting on that side, not only writing.
And do you, Eduardo? It sounds like your ICP is pretty specific with founders and startup founders and where they're at. Do you see yourself expanding to anything other than LinkedIn, or is that where your ICP lives and that's where you guys want to live?
Yeah, so the way that we see it is that a sales funnel has different stages, right? Like the top of the funnel is attention, the attention phase. You need to draw the attention from a, a place. For us, it could be LinkedIn, Twitter, or like any other social channel. Um, the way that we see it is that we can expand, but to offer a high quality and high performing sales funnel instead of just focusing on the top. So instead of doing LinkedIn and then Twitter and then Instagram and then YouTube, we prefer keeping LinkedIn for the attention and then focusing on, okay, so what's
Move down the
next in the
funnel.
funnel, so that we can like become masters on it, to offer it in our in our offer stack and provide like a high quality product to our client, rather than just doing multiple socials, which is, you're solving the same problem. It's top of funnel, like attention.
Yeah,
So yeah.
Paul and I talked about this last week about line extensions, not last week, before, about line extensions and how, sometimes they're not valuable. But yeah, completely understand the whole going deep and hard into LinkedIn to focus on that, because I think, for a lot of people, that's a massive funnel. So I guess, Andrew, unless you had any more questions, I was going to look at like getting ahead into the LinkedIn content. And the way I'd like to frame this, I think it'd be really helpful, Eduardo, is like LinkedIn is definitely a specialty, but I think there's a lot of things that spread across, as you said, like the functions stay the same. How you get there is different, like LinkedIn, X, Facebook, Instagram, like things like that, if you want to build your brand or build your personal brand on any sort of social media. But I'd love to maybe focus it towards, hey, I'm not ready to hit up rhetoric yet. Ideally, I'll get there in the end. Maybe my company isn't earning enough money. They might be, that pre-series, pre-funding founder, right? That's like, I've got to do this myself.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it in the frame of that. It's like, all right, well, how do we get there? And I know you talked a lot about it at the beginning, and it's about mindset. It's about getting yourself in that frame of mind. Maybe we start there and see where that takes us.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I think that the first stage is to have the right mindset. And what I mean by that is that you really need to understand how these work, because if not, you're just gonna waste your time. So what I mean by this is, before starting, uh, you need to think that this is a lifelong project, because it's a long play. Like building an audience and building authority and all that takes time, takes months, takes years, and it just keeps compounding. So if you are looking for short-term results, I definitely don't think that this is a good idea. But it's a lifelong project, because the audience that you build stays with you. So it would be a shame to build an audience, let's say in, I don't know, like car repair, in the car repair industry, if you then like your next business is going to be in the food industry, so you already have this massive audience from that specific niche, which is now completely irrelevant for your next venture. So
It'll be almost like taking your business website and just changing the brand and what you do without changing. You still got all that SEO, right? Google still sends all these people here for the automotive industry when now you do food services.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's really important to make sure that the audience that you're going to build is going to be relevant now and in the future. That's number one. Number two, make sure that you have the patience of doing this because it's going to take a ton of time. And if you treat it like a lifelong project, then it doesn't matter if it takes time because you will always gonna keep doing it. If this is something like every day you're going to eat, right? You're gonna have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it's just the same. Think about it like that. It's never gonna end. So don't think about like the end goal because this is like a new thing that you're just gonna keep doing every single day. There's not like an end point. So
Routine, right?
if you yeah, just a routine that it's not gonna ever end, right? And if you do that,
I was just going to say, I think that the really important component there to take along is that lifelong project, expecting results straight away is not something that's going to happen. But then one thing that I'd love your opinion on, if, for instance, I do change industry, do I just like delete my profile and start again? Or do I slowly pivot over time? Like what's the, it's important to understand, like, because as you said, you move from, food delivery service to Deezer music streaming, then into, the gyms and now into this. And it's like, well, you've now gone across, food, streaming, fitness, and now into, I guess, LinkedIn branding, right?
Yeah.
How, what do you do there?
Yeah, so it becomes really interesting because in some cases, there are trends. You can see like clear trends where, in my case, because I have built so many startups in the past and in Mexico, I am well known in that local, startup scene. So in the end, if it's fitness or food or music or whatever, in the end it's like startups. So I'm being followed by a ton of early stage startups as founders, sorry, because they know me that I'm kind of like a serial startup founder. So that connects everything, and that's actually why my niche with this agency is startup founders, because I could do coaches or I could do like Fortune 500 CEOs or anything like that, but we keep at founders because most of my audience is still startup founders. So there are some connections.
Yeah, so I guess your thread is not necessarily those industries that you're working in; it's startups.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think
mean, again, like people have many different. They don't like. You can categorize them in so many different ways, not only by industry. You can use different filters, right?
Yeah, and I think it comes back to what you said before, Eduardo. I think one of the benefits of rhetoric is understanding the person. So if you're building a personal brand, it's still, if you're being genuine to who you are and being that problem solver or the person providing value, it doesn't really matter what industry you're in or what you're doing. As long as you're not, one day, let's bring it back to the politics, one day you're very left and then you change industry and all of a sudden you're very right. Like obviously that's a pretty clear change. But if you're true to yourself and you're posting based on that and providing value to your audience, I don't think it matters too much if your industry changes or your role changes.
Totally. And yeah, if you start posting things that are really not aligned with you, at some point you're going to burn out or you're going to get bored because you really don't care about that. Right. So yeah, it's counter to it like that.
Yeah. And I think that's posting about a multitude of different things. It's important. So yeah, I like that, Andrew, about being true to yourself. being, that key component that you look at there. So it's like figuring out what line you want to focus on, getting in the mindset to understand it's a long-term process, and then being consistent, right, is the other key element. Are there any other elements when you talk about like what you should be into before starting your personal brand?
So I think those are the most important, to put yourself in the right mindset, to like before starting, to make sure that you are okay with that, and then to understand why it's important. So, for example, Scott Galloway, he says attention is the new oil, and I mean I believe that that's completely a perfect quote, because you are now monetizing the attention of people, and the attention is limited. So, and I mean, it's funny how it works with startup founders, because in our case, well, in my client's case, the founders usually give more attention to code than instead of like creating content. And what I mean by that is that they focus more on building a product. So 100% building a product and zero distribution. So they might take like, I don't know, 3 months or 6 months to build an MVP and have everything like something that works amazingly well. And now they don't have anyone to sell it to. They don't have any distribution. And what it's really interesting is that attention is a zero sum game, and code or building a product is the opposite. So like if you need to take the attention of someone, you need to like there's a limited amount of people that are going to put their attention in specific things. So you need to steal those people to look at you instead of looking at someone else. But if you think about building a product like with AI and with right now, not sure if you've heard about Claude plus Cursor, that basically it makes the programmers irrelevant, like developers. You can now code with natural language. So there's always more tools and more technologies to build product way easier, but the attention is always limited, right? And I think that founders really need to understand that, and based on that, re like like rebalance their priorities uh, on that sense.
I think it's really funny the point you make there about how they turn to cold outbound and they start just bulk outbounding people. But what I find is really funny is how many outbound influencers I see on LinkedIn that are posting on LinkedIn to gain lead generation, generate revenue off LinkedIn, versus how many are sending me cold emails and cold calling. Ridiculous 90% are on LinkedIn, posting things on LinkedIn, sharing free tips, advice, providing value on LinkedIn, versus the 10% who are in your inbox trying to sell you it via email and via phone.
Exactly.
So it's like, it's funny because they don't often do what they sell, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly,
that's
yeah.
a real funny part about it. I think that they're like, you need to do cold outbound. Here's 7 tips of how to do it. And it's like, oh, what cold outbound are you doing? Oh, I just generate all my sales off LinkedIn. It's like, but hang on a minute.
Exactly, yeah. If they were getting amazing results from cold outbound, they why like bothering being active on LinkedIn, right? Doesn't make any sense.
But I think
Yeah.
people often maybe the disconnect is people say, oh, but that's for my like personal brand. It's that's how I personally generate. This is not for the business. For the business, you should be doing outbound. And it's like, well, but it's sort of the same, isn't it? Especially if you're a founder looking to get it off the ground. Is that your personal brand, the business is you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean to get back to the main idea, I think that people really need to understand that the attention is limited. So it's like the law of supply and demand, right? If the supply, if the supply is way bigger than the demand, then you need to focus on the demand, no, not on the supply. And that's what's happening with founders. So I really try to understand that, and because they also think that, oh, but if I'm on LinkedIn it means that I'm not working, or what my investors are going to think if I'm spending all day on LinkedIn, right? But it's like, I mean, it's distribution, it's work. So if you're an early stage founder, you need to put the work and you need to be there. And my tips on how to do that is just spend 1 hour per week, like put it on your calendar, block a time for getting ideas, like half an hour getting ideas, and the other half an hour maybe you can use ChatGPT or Claude or any AI to help you expand on those ideas. And from there you can just edit by yourself, like to make it sound more like you. And that's good enough to start. You can schedule everything, and it's just 1 hour per week that you do that religiously, and you schedule the entire content, and now you have content for the entire week, right? So it's like your marketing power hour, basically, that you are not going to cancel. It's a really important meeting, and I've seen some early stage founders doing that, and it works. I mean, at least they are being active. So that's like super important to just put the content out there and treat it as an MVP. Like if you're building an MVP, just put something out there and start getting signals. Like you need to get signals of what people like, what they don't like, who are the ones that are engaging, and based on that, you start iterating on your content, and that's basically the process to get what we call content market fit. When you know that when you speak about a specific topic in a specific way, you are going to trigger engagement from a specific cohort of people, and that's content market fit. And you can get there uh, only by testing and testing, which is the same concept of when you're building a company or you're building product. Just put something out there and talk to people, to your
So,
customers.
what insights are people looking for? So, say, how do you determine you got contact market fit? What insights are people looking for?
It's usually like, it's funny because it's kind of the same of product market fit. Like there's not like a specific thing that
So, if I'm on
explain it.
LinkedIn, because I've got like post analytics and things like that, should I be saying like impressions are through the roof? That's really important. I've got a heap of
Yeah,
likes, or this went
exactly.
viral. Like, what makes something go viral?
It's that could be like a good sense of content market fit. Like maybe you have, I don't know, like 1,000 followers, and on average you get 5 likes per post. Well, what happens is that maybe you get 10 likes. So for you, it's gonna be like, oh, 10 likes. I mean, that's nothing. But if you see it in as a percentage, it's like 100% increase. It's like a 2x in that sense, right? So that's a signal, right? Or from one like to 2 likes is the same percent, like it's a 2x, right? So those are the signals that you need to start paying attention. And if you just keep doubling down on that, it's like, oh, that topic was interesting for someone. So you just keep iterating based on that. And if you are consistent on putting content out there every single day, then the feedback loop is daily, basically. So you can get to content market fit way faster than if you post one time per week because your feedback loop is weekly.
I think consistency is key, especially when I've done it in the past. And the LinkedIn,
You're a bit quiet these days, mate.
but I've found success on Reddit. So that's like what I said before. If you got success somewhere else, then spend it there. So I'm getting a lot of signal and traffic over there. So, but I think for LinkedIn, whether it's their algorithm or something, but if you're not posting consistently, I think it's a lot harder to get that exposure as well. So I think if
Yeah,
you're gonna do it. You
do
got
it.
to be doing it more than once a week, and scheduling
Totally.
that stuff out to remain consistent.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. So that's like the basics. And then you just need to think a little bit about the strategy, right? Like who is going to be like, if you're doing this to draw the attention of a specific audience, then think like deeply, like do deep research about them and what things are interesting for them, and speak about those things. And it's really important that those make fit with you, because if not, then you're not going to be legitimate, speaking legitimately about things that you really care, and you're going to just burn out. uh, so that's, like, again, like the content market fit is the same thing. Like, what things that you can talk for hours are going to attract the attention of the right people. So it's not only speaking about an industry, it could be speaking about, uh, I don't know, like different trends or futurism, or the industry specifically about something, or a technology, or there's so many different topics that you can use to draw the attention of an audience. And now that you have that, and you're being consistent, and you have this sort of a strategy with some content pillars that is drawing the attention of the right ICP, then it's really important to understand that you should not be selling, like, ever sell. Don't sell, just provide value, value, value. And by value, I mean helping people out, like, um, the lessons that you've learned, or like research that you've made. Just share all of that. Share, like, the strategy of how to do X, how to do Y. And when you keep doing that, then you start becoming an interesting person, a results for person for some people. And then they're going to start looking at your profile. And then you need to optimize your profile, because the profile is the one that should be selling for you. So you should treat your profile as a landing page, like the
What's the
banner.
biggest issues you see with people's LinkedIn profiles?
That they don't have a banner, or the banner is only like the logo of the company.
Because I guess the banner's like the first thing you see there, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So you usually see the banner with a logo and maybe like an outcome, but an outcome doesn't tell you anything. Like, what is that? I really don't know what is your product, what's your service. It's just like, become successful. Okay, how?
What
Like,
success? Yeah.
yeah. So you really need to make sure to explain in less than 5 seconds, what do you do and what problem do you solve, basically, in 1 or 2 lines. And with that, repeat the same thing on the bio. So, founder of your company, then the same thing, the same line, right? And then on the about section, uh, the same thing, basically. You can like start this, like, just send the exact same message. And people, at least, they're going to be able to paint a picture in their head about what do you do. Is it a platform? Is it like I don't know, like, do you sell glasses? Do you sell like phones? What is it, right? And after they have an image in their head of what is it, like, how can that help them with something. So that's like the basics. um and if your content strategy is working, meaning that it's drawing the attention of the right people, then these people naturally are going to be interested in your offer. So you are not selling, you're just giving value, and by giving value, you become an interesting person. So they click on your profile. The profile tells them what is your offer, and they're going to want to learn more. So they're going to send you a message, or they're going to go to your website. That's basically, like, the basics.
Yeah, okay. That's really interesting. Yeah, I think it's just like a website, as you said, like it's your landing page, right? And making sure that the theme is threaded throughout the website. Similar sort of case across that LinkedIn profile, and getting those people in. And is there a way that you can measure conversion rates for your LinkedIn profile? Like, is there a way that you can look at, like, I've had this many views, people have clicked out to my website, or people have connected with me, I get profile views, the connection requests type thing. Is that something that you look at?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Not conversion, but you can see the traffic, like profile views and all that. You can use the LinkedIn analytics for that, or if you want something way more like specific, there's a platform called Shield, which we use. It's great, and you can track all of the metrics from each post. Like, for each post, like from which region were like the people that were engaging, which industry, and that's how you can kind of make sure if your content is drawing the attention of the right people or not.
So it's like a LinkedIn analytics tool, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And then, so it's all about getting in the mindset first, understanding you want to post, understanding it's long term, figuring out what you want to thread through your posts. And stuff. But I think people could get caught up and think too hard on that, right? And so they think too hard on it, and then they come up with something that's like super niche that no one's going to follow. Or they come up with something that's too hard for them to maintain because they're like, oh, I've got to come across as this person, but it's fake, and so they can't do it. And so I think that's like a big trap that some people could fall into. Do you see people like say to you in when you do these meetings with them, like these discovery calls or like profiling calls, you talk to them and they're like, oh, I want to be this person, this person, this person. You like get a couple of weeks in and you go, you're absolutely not that person. You're making this very difficult for us to get this onto LinkedIn because you don't have that personality. Is that something that you see?
No, not really. What I see is that they usually don't want to become like a content creator. They want to maintain that perception of being like a serious startup founder or a serious CEO, and not like that using those typical hooks of this is the like yesterday a car almost killed me. This is what I learned about B2B sales.
Yeah.
I love
My
those.
favourite
Those have got
post.
some real infamy. I think you put one up there, Andrew, recently.
Yeah, I was taking the piss out of all the other content creators that continuously do it. I think there was a marriage proposal, and I was like, this is what it taught me about B2B sales.
Yeah. Proposing to my fiance. That's what it taught me about B2B sales. Yeah.
Yeah, so they don't want to, like, definitely they don't want to be perceived as that, but we don't get like the opposite, which is like I want to be perceived as this. We just get like I don't want to be perceived as this, you know. Yeah, so you need to like be careful on, because in the end you need to use hooks, and like there's so many techniques, using whispers and using different things to draw people attention, but you need to do it in a specific way to avoid giving this perception that the client doesn't want.
And I guess that's another point. Is there a certain bit of content that you see that works? Like, does video content work? The carousels, LinkedIn carousel with images, I've heard they're effective. Is it just text that works better? What sort of content do you find is the most effective, or is it just a mixture?
Yeah, a mixture is the best, because like the algorithm is like like God. No one really understands him well. It depends. Like a couple of years ago, carousels were everything. Like you posted a carousel and it had way more distribution. And I think that is happening now with images and video. Uh, they get way more distribution than only text or than carousels. But I think that the mixture is the best, because again, if you just post videos, then the algorithm picks that up, and then your videos become way less relevant. So like I think that the algorithm qualifies based on using different media types. I think, because no one knows, only the people that work at LinkedIn, right? But yeah, we use a strategy like trying to use different types of content, mostly text, but try to put a video or an image when we can, to just spice things up.
Yeah. And then I think, and using something like Shield, or just looking at it manually, like figuring out like what's working for you and what's not, I think is super important. And then when we look at the writing, so when we're writing posts, you mentioned about hooks earlier and certain things you can do. Is there like something that you would just recommend to people when they're writing posts to do?
Yeah, and it's one word: curiosity. Just try to spark curiosity. Don't
And
give
have you
the
seen?
answer on.
Sorry, go ahead. I
Uh,
think you're about to answer my question.
yeah, so don't give the answer on the hook. Just focus that the hook should be interesting enough, like should be interesting, but at the same time should drive curiosity to want to learn what else. Like, okay, you're talking about something that caught my attention, but don't tell what it is. Like, okay, no, so you now need to click see more. You know, it's the combination of those two. There's so many things that you can do as well. Like it also works really good when you mention your audience. So, for example, if you're targeting startup founders, say something about founders on the hook. They are going to be naturally interested into that. But yeah, like the most important thing is curiosity. And I think that the most important, like it's really, really important to spend a ton of time on the hook, because if you just put a hook and then spend 1 hour writing a post, but the hook is like meh, no one is going to read it. So the most important thing is to nail the hook.
Yeah, and I think that's like that's a really big thing there. If you're, you look at it similar to a founder, they spend all this time building this great product, but don't market it, so no one's going to know it exists. The same thing is if you could spend all this time building out and crafting this like excellent post, but if your hook isn't there, they're not going to read it anyway. So
Yeah.
I think that's a really key bit. And when you talk about a hook, just for people who may be like, okay, cool, but what's a hook? What do you see as some effective tactics? Is it asking a question? Is it having like a vague statement? What do you see as being an effective hook for the post?
Yeah, stories work well. Like this is a story where I learned, not I learned, but like here's the story of how X thing happened. Like, so now you feel like there's intrigue. So okay, I want to see at least the next paragraph to see of like what is it, right? And that's basically how it should be working. Like the first paragraph should send you to the next one and the next one and the next one. But yeah, stories work really well. Um, what else? When you share lessons as well, but lessons, it depends. So if you don't have this credibility yet, it works way better when you say something like, I did a ton of research on, I don't know, like Steve Jobs, and these are the his five key lessons for doing X. So you are generating attention because you spend so much time from someone who has the credibility, and now people are going to be interested in reading that. Because if it's something made by you and you don't have any credibility or any recognition, let's say, then people are going to be like, I mean, who are you? I don't care, you know. So
Yeah,
yeah, so like it's curiosity number one, stories, and basically things that you can only say by yourself. Like that's the most important thing. Like something that only you can say, because anyone can say, here are 5 lessons on how to do B2B sales, right? But if you share something that only happened to you, something specific, then that's gonna drive curiosity, because they're gonna be interested on something specific. So
yeah,
that's also really
personalization, right?
important. Correct.
Personalization. I think that's really cool. And I know we're getting close to time here, so I want to be conscious of that. So when we look at it, the first thing is getting in the mentality that it's a long-term game, it's not a short-term play, preparing yourself for the long haul and figuring out what you want to post about and what you want to be known for. For instance, for you personally, it's that founder space, right? So regardless of moving through the different industries, whether it be food delivery, music, it all stems back to founders, which I think is really cool. So mindset, founders, and then personal brands. It's a really effective way to build attention. to you, your product, what you've got going on. So it's really important to focus on that and have a mind on that.
Exactly.
And then think of your profile page as a landing page. So as much time as you spend on your website and developing all that, same sort of thing with your profile page. You need to look at your banner, especially your bio, your about, your featured section. Make sure they all align with what message you're trying to get across. If you're trying to talk to founders, don't have a whole heap of irrelevant stuff in there that's not relevant to founders in your featured or your bio section. So keeping it relevant in that space. And then when writing, the most important thing is a hook, and try that mixture of content. Use a tool like Shield Analytics to go through and look at LinkedIn and figure out your posts, or just simply go through. LinkedIn's got some pretty handy tools in there for looking at things. But consistency, block off an hour in a week to do research and writing, post it out for the week so it's done. Or if you don't have time for that, go through and contact Eduardo over at Rhetoric and get them to write your posts every week and go through and approve them. So I think there's two sort of areas there. It's like if you don't have the money or you've got the time, go and do it yourself. If you don't have either of those, if you don't have that, then go and hit up Rhetoric to get that done. But thank you so much for coming on today, Eduardo. I really appreciate it. And some of those lessons for LinkedIn, I'm immediately thinking in my mind, I'm like, oh, man, do any of that. Like, when's the last time I looked at my profile? Probably way too long. Like, I'm not posting enough. Like, you just start to get all this like anxiety about not doing enough, and it's like you just need to start. Is probably the key message to a lot of people there, regardless of what platform, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever. Just start, right? Just get out there and put something out there. But if people want to get in contact with you, Eduardo, I assume LinkedIn's probably the best place.
Exactly. My name on LinkedIn, and we're there. Or Rhetoric page.
Awesome. So what I'll do is in the show notes, I'll make sure to put your LinkedIn in there, and I'll also put a link to the website if people want to head there and check out what Rhetoric do, and or a little bit more about Rhetoric, or potentially book in a call to see if they can boost their personal brand on LinkedIn.
Great. Loved chatting with you guys, and cheers.
Yeah, cheers to that. But for everyone, do you want to do the outro, Andrew, or you want me to handle it?
Like and subscribe on all our socials at Beers and Business Pod. Submit any questions, topics, or any other guests you want to see. Find the podcast weekly on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, everywhere you get your podcasts. What is it? 10 a.m. Tuesdays? Is it changed because of daylight savings or?
Oh, yeah, 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time.
There you go.
Tuesdays.
There you go.
a.m. on Queensland time, on 4X time.
And that's it. Be sure to tune in next episode. We'll see you then.
All right, cheers. Thanks, Eduardo.
Thank you. Should I hang up?